There are 7 things you must never reveal. Not to your best friend, not to your partner, not even to your own family. Stoicism teaches us to keep most of ourselves private, because the more you reveal, the easier you become to break. Niccolò Machiavelli warned us long ago. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Almost no one experiences what you actually are. That's not just a clever line. That's a warning label. Machiavelli never lived a soft life. He watched empires rise and collapse over a single leaked secret. And in The Prince, he made one thing painfully clear. If you want to keep control of your life, you reveal as little as possible. The more you show people, the easier you are to dismantle. People smile at you every single day. But behind that smile, something else is happening. They're collecting, filing away details, storing pieces of you for later. And if you hand them the wrong piece, especially at the wrong moment, they will use it against you. So today, I'm giving you 7 things you should never reveal to anyone. On the surface, they look harmless. A goal here, a regret there, a number in your bank account. But each one, once spoken out loud to the wrong person, becomes a lever they can pull whenever they want. So listen closely, because this could protect your reputation, your peace, and maybe your entire future. 1. Your next move. You tell people your goals, your strategy, your 5-year vision. You think they'll be excited for you. And on the surface, most of them will smile and nod. But in silence, something else starts happening. They begin, quietly, to chip away at it. They ask you questions dressed up as curiosity. Are you sure that's the right timing? Have you thought this through? They doubt it, not because they genuinely care about your outcome, but because some small part of them fears what you might become if that plan actually works. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most people don't want to see you rise above them, not out of pure malice, but out of comparison. The moment your ambition grows louder than theirs, something shifts. Friends quietly turn into critics. And if your next move threatens their sense of comfort, even a little, they'll find a way to slow you down, often while smiling the entire time. Your plan isn't safe sitting in other people's heads. It's only safe once it's already done. There's a woman named Elena who ran a small design studio out of Lisbon a few years back. She had one idea that could have doubled her client base within a year, a partnership with a much larger agency overseas. She was thrilled. She told her business partner, her closest friend from university, and 2 people in her group chat. Within 2 weeks, that friend had reached out to the same agency, pitching a nearly identical concept under a different name. Elena lost the deal before she ever got to make her pitch, not because her idea was bad, because she handed it to someone who saw an opening before she did. That's what happens when you reveal your next move too early. If people see the plan before it's executed, some of them will find a way to block it. If they see it after it's already done, all they can do is respect it or fear it. There's no in between. And here's the part that stings the most. If you talk yourself up and then fail, you haven't just lost the outcome. You've given people something even more valuable: evidence. A reason to quietly laugh. A story they'll tell about the time you talked a big game and it didn't. Don't hand anyone that story. Move quietly. Let results speak louder than any announcement ever could. The second you reveal your next move, you expose your ambition. And ambition tends to trigger one of 2 reactions in other people. The insecure ones try to shrink it. The competitive ones try to sabotage it. This is exactly why the sharpest people you know rarely explain their plans in advance. They act, they deliver, they let the finished product speak for them. Picture this. You tell a friend you're finally leaving your stable job to start something of your own. Instead of excitement, you get, "Are you sure that's smart right now?" Or, "Isn't that risky?" Or, "You'd really give up a steady paycheck for that." Stop for a second and ask yourself honestly, were they worried about your well-being? Or were they uncomfortable watching you take a leap? They were too afraid to take themselves? People will dress doubt up as advice and hand it to you like a gift. They'll use the old version of you to try to hold back the version you're becoming. That's not really like you. You've never done anything like this before. Let me be direct. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your growth. You don't need permission to evolve, and you certainly don't need a group vote to act on your own instincts. Machiavelli once wrote that there is a particular satisfaction in outmaneuvering someone who thinks they've already outmaneuvered you. That's not an invitation to be dishonest with people. It's a reminder to stay 2 steps ahead. Let others believe they understand your plans, while you quietly execute the real ones underneath. Think about the figures history remembers as genuinely powerful. They rarely announced their next move before making it. They moved first and let everyone else scramble to react. Rulers who held on to power for decades weren't the ones broadcasting their strategy at dinner parties. They were the ones whose opponents only understood the plan once it was already too late to stop it. Today's culture tells you the opposite. Share everything. Post the process. Let people cheer you on before you've even started. But that's not strength. That's exposure. Real strength lives in silence, in restraint, in letting your work speak once it's finished, not while it's still fragile. Every time you share your next move too soon, you hand someone the power to damage it, sometimes with a single sentence, sometimes with nothing more than a raised eyebrow, at the wrong moment. And both are enough to derail something that hasn't fully taken root yet. Ask yourself honestly, why do you keep sharing your plans with people who have never followed through on their own? If that question landed somewhere uncomfortable, drop this in the comments. I move in silence. 2. Your weaknesses. The moment you tell the wrong person your deepest weakness, you've handed them a weapon. You might believe you're simply being honest, being vulnerable, being human. But somewhere behind that comforting nod, a part of them is quietly filing it away. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should be gentle with others and strict with ourselves. That means your pain is something you work through internally, not something you broadcast for sympathy. Why does that matter so much? Because most people don't actually carry your weight for you. They simply watch. And the few who do pay close attention are often waiting for the exact moment you're vulnerable, so they know precisely where to press. What feels to you like an honest cry for connection often looks to them like an opportunity. You bleed in front of them, and they act like they're helping you bandage it, only to press harder on that same wound later, when it benefits them. Here's a hard truth worth sitting with. Some of your fiercest opponents were once people you trusted completely. You need to internalize this. You are never obligated to expose something you haven't already mastered on your own. Your weakness belongs to you. It is not an announcement for the group chat. Think back to the last argument, where someone brought up a fear you confided months, maybe years, earlier. Or the relative who casually mentioned your insecurity, like it was a funny anecdote at a family dinner. Or the ex who, after the relationship ended, used your most private fear as a parting shot. People rarely forget the things you admit in weak moments. They collect them, quietly, patiently, and cash them in when it suits them. There was a man named Thomas who worked in finance in Toronto. Early in his career, he confided in a close colleague about a panic attack he'd had before a major presentation. Something deeply personal that he'd never told anyone else at the firm. Years later, when that same colleague was up against him for a director position, rumors started circulating about Thomas being unstable under pressure. Nobody could ever trace exactly where the rumor started. Thomas had his suspicions. He never got the promotion. So what's the alternative? You build yourself up privately. You face your own struggles behind closed doors. You become the kind of person who quietly masters his difficulties instead of publicly marketing them for sympathy. And if you're thinking, but everyone needs support, you're right. Support matters, but real support is earned through demonstrated strength, not through tears handed to the wrong audience. In a culture that constantly rewards oversharing, the person who stays composed, who remains difficult to read, becomes the one people quietly respect. He's unpredictable in the best sense, grounded, hard to rattle. That's not coldness. That's discipline. You don't need to walk around advertising your cracks. You become the kind of person storms move around, not through. Because the instant you show someone exactly where to hit, eventually, someone will. Your pain deserves protection, not an audience. And remember this, some of your fiercest rivals started out as your closest confidants. The very people who once said, "I've got you." One day, some of them will turn, and when they do, they'll use every single thing you ever handed them. Stop expecting unconditional loyalty from people who quietly benefit from your weak moments. You don't owe the world unrestricted access to your inner life. You owe yourself your own dignity. 3. Your income. The wealthier you become, the quieter you need to get. There's a reason old money tends to stay silent, while new money tends to announce itself. Real power doesn't shout. It watches, and it waits. The moment you start talking openly about how much you earn, watch how quickly the dynamics around you shift. Suddenly, you become a measuring stick. People start comparing, calculating, sometimes even resenting. Some stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a resource. Money doesn't just change your lifestyle. It changes how people treat you, often in ways you won't notice until it's already happened. Tell someone your exact income, and somewhere in the back of their mind, a quiet calculation begins. How can this be useful to me? How does this compare to what I have? Could I ever need something from this person later? The richer you get, the quieter you should become. Money rarely buys real loyalty. What it buys is attention, and a good portion of that attention isn't genuine. Real power doesn't come from showing what you have. It comes from letting people wonder. Let them guess. Let the uncertainty sit there, a little uncomfortable, a little intriguing. Silence, in this case, becomes the ultimate statement. If people don't know exactly what you have, they can't calibrate exactly how to treat you or how to try to use you. Mystery earns a strange kind of respect that open display never quite manages to buy. Consider the people around you right now. The moment they learn precisely what you earn, something subtle changes. Some begin to feel like you owe them something, a loan, a favor, a bailout when their own plans fall apart. And if you say no, suddenly you're the villain of the story. Not because you changed, but because the version of you they had built in their imagination, the one who could always help, just collapsed. There's a story about a man in Chicago named Marcus, who quietly built a successful contracting business over about 8 years. He never talked numbers with anyone outside his accountant. One holiday season, after a couple of drinks, he mentioned a rough estimate of his yearly revenue to his brother-in-law. Within a month, 3 separate family members had approached him about investment opportunities and temporary loans. He'd spent nearly a decade building quietly. It took one relaxed conversation to turn him into the family bank. Silence isn't really about secrecy for its own sake. It's about protecting yourself. If people don't know exactly what you have, they can't precisely calculate how to manipulate you. You can walk into any room and be quietly underestimated. And that underestimation is your advantage. Nobody plans an attack against a threat they don't see coming. The people who genuinely hold power tend to let others guess. Let them wonder how much you actually make. Let the ambiguity sit there. Mystery, more often than not, outperforms open wealth. People respect what they cannot fully measure. They're cautious around what they cannot easily label. If you want to command a room, you don't need to announce your bank balance. You need to own your silence. You never have to explain your lifestyle to anyone. And you certainly don't need to defend what you've earned through years of effort. Pause here for a moment. How many people in your life actually know your real numbers? And be honest with yourself. Did that information bring you closer to them? Or did it quietly introduce pressure, expectation, sometimes even resentment? If you think back carefully, you probably already know the answer. Picture this. You tell a close friend you had an unusually good year financially. At first, they're genuinely happy for you, but slowly, the tone shifts. You must be doing really well now. Hey, I've actually got this idea. Could you help me get it started? Suddenly, your success has created an expectation. And the moment you can't, or won't, meet it, admiration quietly curdles into resentment. And this isn't limited to friendships. In relationships, money can quietly become a form of leverage. In families, the person who made it often becomes the unofficial safety net, expected to carry more, expected to say yes more often, and rarely allowed to say no without being labeled ungrateful or distant. This isn't a suggestion to stop helping people you love. It's a reminder that while you're still building, you have to stay protective of your own progress. Once you're established, plenty of people will suddenly see you as the one who made it. While you're still in the building phase, your energy and your resources need to stay focused, not scattered across everyone else's expectations. 4. Your relationship conflicts. You've seen the posts. Can't believe what he did to me again. She's been so distant lately. Relationships are just hard, I guess. That's not honesty. That's weakness. Broadcast to an audience that didn't earn access to it. Picture the scene. You and your partner get into a serious argument. You feel hurt, confused, maybe even betrayed. So you call a friend. You post in the group chat. You lay out every detail. The words that were said, the accusations, the whole messy timeline. You believe you're gathering support. In reality, you're broadcasting instability. Now, everyone in that group chat knows your relationship has cracks. And here's the uncomfortable part. When people sense cracks, they rarely rush in to help repair them. Far more often, they quietly watch, half expecting the whole thing to collapse. Here's the rule worth remembering. Never expose the details of your relationship conflicts to people outside that relationship. Once you do, you've given away a piece of your own power. You've turned something deeply personal into shared entertainment. And the truth is, most people watching don't actually care the way you think they do. Plenty of people will offer sympathy with one hand while quietly sharpening something with the other. Your relationship is your own territory. Nobody standing outside of it deserves a detailed map of your emotional vulnerabilities. Once your private conflicts go public, something shifts in how people see you. You stop being viewed as composed and steady. You start becoming a storyline, sometimes even a punchline, in someone else's conversation. People start to see the leash instead of the man. They see someone visibly controlled by chaos, rather than someone who's simply navigating a hard season privately. And that visibility costs you respect. Sharing every conflict in real time reveals your emotional dependence to anyone willing to listen. That's not vulnerability in a healthy sense. That's an open wound with no bandage. What you say in a moment of pain has a way of becoming someone else's entertainment, someone else's leverage, someone else's story to retell later, usually without the context that made it make sense. Say your partner disrespected you publicly, and you vent about it to a coworker. Weeks later, that same coworker brings it up jokingly in front of others. Say you admit a partner was unfaithful, and you chose to stay. Some people will never quite look at you the same way again, not because they're right to judge, because that's simply how a lot of people operate. You stop being the composed person in the room. You become the cautionary tale. This isn't limited to friend groups either. In professional settings, when colleagues or clients catch wind of ongoing relationship drama, it quietly shapes how seriously they take you. Is he distracted? Is she reliable under pressure right now? Nobody says it out loud, but it factors in. Here's the deeper principle at play. People generally respect what you visibly protect. If your relationship matters to you, treat the hard parts of it as private, not as a public performance. If it's genuinely become unhealthy, address it directly or walk away from it. But don't parade the difficulty around like it's proof of how much you've endured. The moment you start explaining every detail to outside observers, you hand them a strange kind of authority over how your relationship gets defined in their minds. This doesn't mean suffering silently or isolating yourself completely. If you truly need support, seek it from someone equipped to actually help. A therapist, a mentor, someone with the training and distance to offer real guidance, not a friend who can barely manage their own relationships and is mostly looking for something dramatic to talk about. Here's the deeper Machiavellian principle. In any competitive environment, whoever knows your soft spot holds a quiet kind of leverage over you, whether or not they ever use it. The moment your relationship struggles are known to the wrong people, they become one more pressure point available to anyone looking for a way to unsettle you. If it hurts, that doesn't automatically mean it belongs online or in casual conversation. If it's sacred to you, protect it accordingly. Because what you expose emotionally has a strange tendency to eventually get used strategically. And more often than not by an enemy, but by a bystander who simply enjoys the show. People are often drawn to watching someone else's stability crack, not necessarily out of cruelty, but because it makes their own struggles feel a little more normal by comparison. Now, flip that entirely. Imagine you keep your private conflicts private. You never narrate the difficult stretches to an audience. You show up composed, steady, clearly working through things on your own terms. What happens? People assume strength. They see no visible cracks, so they extend more respect, more trust, more benefit of the doubt. Even if things are genuinely difficult behind closed doors, your composure becomes its own quiet form of power. Control your own narrative, or someone else will happily control it for you. If this is landing with you, take a moment and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep going. And there are still 3 more principles ahead, including the one that quietly damages the most people without them ever realizing why. 5. Your family struggles. Do you believe that opening up about your family's problems automatically earns you understanding? That sharing your childhood, an absent parent, a chaotic household, will somehow make people relate to you on a deeper level? Often, it does the opposite. It gives them something to quietly judge, rather than something to genuinely empathize with. Not everyone who listens is actually listening with care. Some are simply gathering material. When you share your family's struggles, part of you hopes for support. But what you often end up giving people instead is a story. And stories travel, especially the ones that make you look fragile. Here's the rule. Be extremely selective about whoever hears the details of your family's private struggles, whether that's colleagues, casual acquaintances, or even people who call themselves friends but haven't actually proven it. Most people, even well-meaning ones, don't hold that information the way you'd hope. And some who seem sympathetic in the moment will later repeat it, reshaped, softened around the edges to sound like harmless conversation. Here's a difficult truth to sit with. When you reveal the dysfunction inside your household, you sometimes strip away a bit of how people perceive you outside of it. People don't always separate you cleanly from where you came from. They quietly project it onto you. No wonder he struggles with commitment. That explains a lot about her, honestly. They might act sympathetic in the moment, and then, months later, bring it up casually, almost as entertainment, at a gathering you're not even part of. Why does this happen? Because, uncomfortable as it is, some people's sense of self gets a small boost from having someone else to feel sorry for, or superior to. It gives them something to discuss when their own lives feel uneventful, something to quietly dissect when they need a distraction of their own. Machiavelli argued that if a leader cannot be both loved and feared, it's safer to be feared. Translate that into everyday life. When you overshare deep family pain with the wrong audience, you often end up with neither real respect nor real warmth. You end up with pity instead. And pity has a strange way of quietly eroding respect. People who pity you rarely follow your lead. They don't fully trust your judgment. They've mentally filed you a notch below where you'd want to stand, whether they realize they're doing it or not. Consider a simple, ordinary scenario. You're at work, and a colleague casually asks how your weekend was. Your guard slips. Honestly, rough. My dad disappeared again. It's been like that my whole life. My mom was a wreck all weekend. I'm exhausted. You think you're simply being open, but often what registers on the other end is unstable, distracted, maybe not quite steady enough to fully rely on. They probably won't say that to your face. But the next time a high-visibility project or a leadership opportunity comes up, something in the back of their mind quietly steers them elsewhere, not out of malice, just out of an unconscious hesitation about your foundation. Some things deserve genuine protection rather than casual disclosure. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the quality of your mind is shaped by the nature of your habitual thoughts, that your inner world takes on the tone of whatever you dwell on most. If your energy is constantly spent reliving old dysfunction out loud, that energy follows you into rooms you didn't intend it to enter. And people can sense it, even when they can't quite name what they're sensing. So what's the better path? Process privately. Heal on your own terms. ideally with real support like a therapist or someone genuinely equipped to help. Build in relative quiet. And when you eventually rise above where you started, let people witness the strength you built, not a detailed replay of the storm you came from. Your story belongs to you. It was never meant to be public property, and it was never meant to double as someone else's entertainment. 6. Your long-term goals. Not your weekend plans, not the next small milestone, the real vision, the version of your life that almost nobody has seen yet. That one deserves real protection. Have you ever wondered why so many genuinely talented people never quite get where they're capable of going? Often, it's because they talked too soon and too much. They had a real vision. They shared it enthusiastically. People clapped, offered encouragement, told them how exciting it sounded. And that early rush of approval, strangely enough, is sometimes exactly where the momentum starts to quietly die. A lot of people confuse talking about success with actually building it. If people don't know the full scope of what you're working toward, they can't accidentally or intentionally. Here's a hard truth. Most people don't genuinely want to watch you succeed far beyond them. Even if they love you, they're usually fine with you improving a little, not so fine with you outpacing them by a wide margin. Support often has quiet limits, especially once your growth starts to highlight the gap between where they are and where they wish they were. You start a side project, and someone close to you asks, "Why not just focus on your regular job instead?" You start investing seriously in yourself, and somebody mutters, half joking, "Who are you trying to become?" You lay out a 5-year plan, and someone laughs and calls it unrealistic. Often, these comments come from people who quietly gave up on their own bigger goals years earlier, and watching you still believe in yours stirs something uncomfortable in them. So you're left with essentially 2 paths. Share the plan freely, let people pick it apart, offer their doubts, and quietly shrink it down to something more reasonable. Or keep it close, move with intention, and let the results eventually speak loudly enough that questioning you stops making sense. Here's a principle worth holding on to. Let people see very little. Let them expect very little from you in advance. Because the person who says less tends to move more freely, while the person who talks big early often becomes an easy target for doubt and interference. There's a psychological trap hidden in early disclosure too. When you describe your big goal out loud to an enthusiastic audience, your brain often registers a small hit of satisfaction, almost like the achievement has already partially happened. You feel the validation, you feel seen, but nothing has actually been built yet. No structure, no sustained effort, no real sacrifice, just a feeling that can quietly deflate the very drive you needed to finish the job. Machiavelli suggested that when a leader must choose between being loved and being respected, respect tends to hold up better over time. Sharing your long-term vision too widely, too early, often chases the wrong kind of validation, the applause instead of the outcome. And the more you chase early approval, the more your original vision gets gently reshaped by other people's comfort levels rather than by your own conviction. Ask yourself honestly why the instinct to share big goals feels so strong. Usually, it's the desire for validation, for someone to say, "I believe in you," so you don't have to carry the belief entirely on your own. But that need, however human, can quietly weaken your follow-through. The moment your vision becomes public, you've essentially invited outside opinions into a space that should be shaped almost entirely by your own judgment. There's also a well-documented pattern where people who announce big goals too early actually follow through less often, not because they're lazy, but because part of the emotional reward, being seen as ambitious, has already been collected. The mystery is gone. The internal fire has less to burn against. So instead, say less, work quietly, build the skill, the plan, the momentum, mostly out of view. And when there's finally something real to show, let the results introduce themselves. Let people wonder, quietly impressed, how you manage to pull it off without anyone noticing the process. 7. Your biggest regrets. People will often act like they care. They'll nod along as you speak. Some will even share something vulnerable of their own to make the moment feel mutual. But the instant you hand someone your deepest regret, your most painful failure, they will very rarely see you exactly the same way again. Here's an uncomfortable reality. Most people simply aren't equipped to carry someone else's regret with the care it deserves. Some will store it, some will wait. And the moment you happen to succeed more than they expected, or start setting boundaries they don't love, that old regret has a strange way of resurfacing, usually at the worst possible time. You really think you've changed? Wasn't this the same person who... It's kind of funny watching you act like you've got it all figured out now. It doesn't matter if it happened 5 years ago or 5 months ago, that vulnerability becomes an opening, whether or not that was ever your intention in sharing it. This is the quiet cost of confession in an environment that isn't always as gentle as it should be. You believe you're being genuine. Someone else may quietly register it as a lever they now have access to. Machiavelli's core idea about fear and love applies here too. Regret, once shared carelessly, tends to invite pity rather than respect. And people generally don't follow, admire, or defer to someone they secretly pity. They respect the version of you that's actively becoming something, not necessarily the version frozen in a story about who you used to be. If you feel the need to process something painful, that's completely valid, but be intentional about where that processing happens. A journal, a therapist, a mentor, bound by real confidentiality. Not the friend who means well, but talks a little too freely after a couple of drinks. Not the partner who might not always be in your corner. Not the co-worker whose warmth doesn't always extend past convenient moments. Because here's an odd but consistent pattern. Your past often stays more interesting to other people than your actual future does. When people ask probing questions about your worst moments, it's not always out of pure concern. Sometimes it's simply human curiosity looking for a weak point to hold onto. A story that starts with, "You wouldn't believe what he went through," or "She used to be a completely different person." Even once you've genuinely grown past it, some people will keep that old version of you frozen in their memory, not as something you overcame, but as evidence they can quietly point back to. So what's the better approach? Process it fully. Let it shape your discipline instead of your reputation. Let it become fuel that quietly drives better decisions, rather than a story you keep retelling to strangers hoping for sympathy. Consider someone who spent years in unhealthy relationships early in adulthood, repeatedly manipulated, repeatedly let down. Eventually, that person did the work, set real boundaries, built genuine confidence, but in a new relationship, they shared the entire history openly. Every detail, every low point. At first, their new partner was compassionate. Months later, during an unrelated argument, that same painful history got thrown back at them as a weapon. You were so easy to manipulate back then. Who's to say you've really changed? It wasn't true anymore, but the ammunition had already been handed over freely, long before it was ever needed. Here's the underlying lesson. Don't arm other people with your own past failures unless you've genuinely thought through what that means. The instinct to confess pain to someone who hasn't fully earned your trust is one of the most common ways people quietly disarm themselves. Ask yourself honestly why you feel the pull to share your regrets so openly. Usually, it's a desire to feel lighter, to feel understood, to hear someone say, "I've been through something similar too." That craving is deeply human, but leaning on it too heavily, especially with people who haven't proven themselves trustworthy over time, tends to leave you more exposed than relieved. Seneca wrote that true courage is closely tied to genuine freedom. And freedom, in this context, doesn't mean disclosing everything to everyone. It means mastering something so completely within yourself that you no longer feel the need to explain it to people who haven't earned that access. Let your continued growth speak so clearly that your past eventually becomes a footnote rather than a headline. This doesn't mean pretending your past didn't happen. It means being deliberate about who gets to hear the full story and making sure it's shared in a way that can't later be stored, repeated, or twisted against you. Because people rarely forget the things you've told them you regret. And under the right pressure, at the wrong moment, that information has a way of resurfacing exactly when you can least afford it. If any of this landed for you, type this in the comments. I carry my past with discipline, not as a confession. Most people never fully step into their own power, not because they lack the ability, but because they overshare, overtrust, and move too early and too loudly. They leak their goals, their fears, their private battles, until very little is left that's genuinely theirs, alone. So ask yourself honestly, how many opportunities have quietly slipped away simply because you said too much, too soon, to people who hadn't earned that information? How many times did you slow your own progress, explaining yourself to people who, if you're being honest, don't even have full clarity about their own direction? Now imagine the alternative. You stop broadcasting the process. You build quietly. You heal privately. You move with intention. And when you finally act, it lands with a kind of precision that surprises everyone watching. Because the world doesn't particularly respect announcements. It respects results that arrive without warning. If this resonated with you, don't just keep it to yourself. Send it to someone who needs to hear it too. A friend, a sibling, someone who talks a little too much about plans that never quite happen. It might genuinely help protect their future. And if you got value from this, go ahead and subscribe. It helps this channel keep growing, and there's more of this kind of clarity coming your way soon.